and welcome to the Chicago Sports Podcast, episode number 2. And today we will be recapping the Bears' Week 7 loss to the Los Angeles Rams. The final score of last night's game was 24-10 at SoFi Stadium. And the big story of this game for the Bears was their offense. Pretty abysmal. No touchdowns on the night for the offense. The key stats for the offense: Nick Foles was 28 for 40 with 261 yards and 2 interceptions. David Montgomery, 14 carries for 48 yards. Allen Robinson was the Bears' leading receiver with 4 receptions and 70 yards. Other receivers for the Bears: Darnell Mooney had a pretty good game last night. He had 3 receptions and 40 yards. And Cole Kmet had 2 receptions for 45 yards and a 38-yard reception, I believe the longest pass play of the season for the Bears thus far. And another big story for the Bears offense last night was their offensive line. They were not able to hold up against Aaron Donald and that Rams defense. Nick Foles was pressured on 20 of his 44 dropbacks last night. Although, the interesting stat for this is he actually had a higher passer rating when being pressured, which is a little bit weird. But the offensive line did have their struggles last night. They allowed 2 sacks to the former Chicago Bear Leonard Floyd, and they allowed some sacks to Aaron Donald and the other players on the Rams' defensive line. And the Bears' offense really didn't get anywhere last night. They got a field goal, and that was it. They made 2 red zone trips with an interception and a turnover on downs. So overall, just a very poor offensive game for the Bears, which really put them out of the game from the beginning. As for the defense, they pretty much had their backs up against the wall this entire game, and it's really hard to play under that pressure for the entire game. Again, the defense struggled with penalties, already coming in as the most penalized defense in the NFL. They had 6 penalties for 46 yards last night. Although on a bright spot for the defense, Eddie Jackson did have a scoop and score last night. Finally got his first touchdown of the year after having 2 taken away so far this year. Tashaun Gibson Sr. missed actually 2 interceptions in one drive, batted down the ball. Could have had probably even a pick 6, so he could have had 2 defensive touchdowns last night, but it did not end up going the Bears' way at all last night. Again, the defense struggling with their rush defense. They allowed 161 rush yards. And allowed Malcolm Brown to get into the end zone for a touchdown. The Rams offense really kept the Bears defense off balance all night. On that first touchdown, you saw them come out of the huddle quick, snap the ball quick, and get in the end zone very quick. The high pace did not bode well for the Bears last night, and yeah, they came out on the losing end for sure. So the Rams came into this game as 6-point favorites, definitely covered the spread with a 14-point win. So for all the bettors out there who bet on the Rams, a good night for them. Jared Goff had by far his best game against the Bears of his career. It is his 3rd game against the Bears. He's now 2-1 against the Bears all time. Last night he was 23 for 33, 219 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Coming into the game, his prior starts against the Bears, he had just a 50% completion percentage, 1 touchdown, and 5 interceptions. He doubled his touchdown total and threw 0 interceptions last night for the Los Angeles Rams. And they had a bounce-back win after their last game against San Francisco, in which they lost. And so the Rams move to 5-2, and the Bears fall to 5-2. So right now, both of them do sit in a wild card spot. The Bears fall out of first place in the NFC North. And next week, they take on the Saints in Chicago. Should be a good game. The Bears really need to bounce back. And some other, I would say, just reactions from the game last night. A lot of people were very unhappy with the play calling of Matt Nagy. A lot of people think Bill Lazar should be calling plays for the Bears. The offensive coordinator has yet to receive the privilege And a lot of people are calling for Lazar to get the play calling duties. Other reaction to the game last night: should Mitchell Trubisky be back in as the Bears' starting quarterback? There's been a lot of talk about Nick Foles and the fact that he is not really able to get outside of the pocket. And Mitch Trubisky offers some freedom with that. So we will see if Mitch Trubisky does get another opportunity this year. I would love to see it. Really, ever since that comeback that Nick Foles led against Atlanta, we haven't really seen much from Nick Foles. Kind of disappointing. Hopefully Mitchell Trubisky can get another opportunity. And again, another big reaction from the game last night was the offensive line and their horrible play. They just did not play well, and a lot of people are calling for Ryan Pace to sign or trade for an offensive lineman. Of course, the news coming out this week: Quinton Spain was released. He is available. A pretty good offensive lineman, used to play on the Raiders. Could offer some offensive line help for the Chicago Bears, who are in dire need of it. We saw last year their offensive line was not good, and this year it honestly doesn't look too much better. They have regressed quite a bit from their 2018 offensive line, who had a Pro Bowler, and they no longer have that kind of play on their offensive line. And so, the recap for the Bears Week 7, they lose by a final score of 24-10. And looking to next week against the Saints, who could still be without Michael Thomas, which would be huge for the Bears. Last time the Bears played the Saints, they got crushed by Teddy Bridgewater, and we saw them beat Teddy Bridgewater 2 weeks ago against Carolina. So they'll be playing Drew Brees. Historically, these past few times they played the Saints, they've not done well, but of course, they beat the Saints in the 2006 NFC Championship, so hopefully they can show us more of that. And as for us Bears fans, we are moving on to week number 8, still in the playoff picture, which is awesome to see. Hoping the Bears bounce back. Thanks for tuning in to episode number 2, the Bears recap of week number 7. Make sure to subscribe for more Chicago sports podcast content. Thanks for tuning in.